Hi, this is Danielle and welcome to my channel. Today's card is going to be a really quick card. It's pretty fast. I just wanted to throw up this disclaimer that this video is pretty messy. um, it's going to be really quick and I really wanted to show my technique, but just know that the pictures that you see in the end are the final results of a second attempt. Um, so just be aware of that. So I start by taping down my panel, my card panel to the workspace, and I'm overlaying it with a stencil. Um, I don't know the name of the stencil off the top of my head while I'm doing this voiceover, but if you go to the description in the video here, um, I'll have the link to my blog post and excuse me, it'll provide all the details as far as the dimensions, the products I'm using, etc. As you'll notice, I'm using my ink blender brush to lay on the Distress Oxide ink. I'm using Abandoned Coral, and I would have preferred to use a lighter hand. I'm still getting used to the blender brush and oxide inks. That oxide ink really lays on top of the paper, the surface, and doesn't absorb into the paper as much as a regular Distress ink does. So the application of that ink, you can just use a lighter hand. At least that's the note for myself. When I use Distress Oxide inks, and part of the card design entails a heat emboss or embossing, I want to make sure that that layer is completely dry. So you either have the option of just letting it dry overnight, or you can opt to use a heating tool as I'm doing here to speed up that process. I normally heat both the front and back sides just to try to keep the card flat as possible before I move on to my next step. One of the tips I learned over the years is before I move on to embossing my sentiment, I want to make sure that this panel is really dry. So I take clear embossing ink, I spread it over the card panel. If I see that it just completely slides off, that means it's dry. If it doesn't, then I brush off the excess or any powder that's remaining, and then take a few more minutes or a few more seconds to heat the panel and then repeat that. So now I'm preparing to move on to stamping my sentiment. I'm going to use my stamping tool. You can use any stamping tool. In this video I'm using the Misty. The stamp sentiment is a scripty sentiment coming from Avriel. Again, I'll have all those details of the products I use in my blog post. So make sure you check out the description in this video so you can get to the link. Now here is why I call the video so messy. Aside from early on, you saw that my stencil shifted when I was attempting to ink blend right there. When the paper starts pulling up, to me, that's a sense of that the stamp itself isn't conditioned as it should, as well as I don't think I have enough pressure on the paper to keep the panel down. So I attempt to correct this, and I don't, well, I was going to say I don't believe I moved my panel, but it's obvious that I didn't put the panel back in its original position because you see the shadow there. I get a little frustrated here, but I just continue to move on. So I'm stamping the sentiment, getting prepared to heat emboss. In my second attempt, which I don't show on camera, but you'll see the results in the pictures at the end of this video, I take my time with this part. I take a little longer, I take my time, and I make sure I have a couple more magnets to hold it down. And by then I was able to condition my stamp a little bit by stamping it off on scrap pieces of copy paper. And I usually use VersaFine clear ink to do that. So while this is playing out, I want to encourage you to go to the description of this video and click on the link or copy the link to my blog post. There you'll find the inspiration behind this card, which is a bunch of crafty friends celebrating Christine from Pattacrafts reaching her a recent milestone of 500 subscribers. So if you go to my blog post, it'll have those details along with the participants in the hop. So it'll be pretty nice if you will go and check that out. We have a lot of card projects entailed or involved in this, and there's a chance at a giveaway. So that's pretty neat. I'm going back to the card now. So I'm heat embossing, and again, there's many mistakes I've made in this video, and I'm hoping it doesn't take away from the celebration. That's why I opted to participate in the hop using my blog opposed to this video. So I finished embossing, and one of the things that that isn't shown on camera, but in my second attempt, I placed a second application of the embossing powder, and that gave it a pretty sharp look. It's really shiny and clear. There's no impressions in it, and so that's one thing I could offer to you to do for actually for big large sentiments like this. You can do a second application of the embossing powder. Maybe I'll show that in the video in another video. Anyway, for this card, I'm now applying that card panel to the black cardstock to make to give dimension. I'm adding that layer onto the card base, and normally I would take time to trim down to make all sides even, but for some reason I felt like I was rushing. But nevertheless, you'll see the results of my second attempt in pictures here. You'll also notice that I added a second color in the middle of the card, and I think I use fossilized amber. But if you go to my blog post, you can see all of the details there. So thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I would love for you to visit the blog post, add a comment, and thank you so much for watching.